Thank you so much. You always make osteochords very simple. I had heard your talk at Pune Ferguson College International Conference,
Yes.
and that is when I had decided that no, people must need. I think you're one of the very few people who are working in recent osteochords. And so, thank you for a very lucid presentation. So many applications that you have developed, so many small correlations between different parameters. Uh, so, it
Dr.
was,
Rajini, can you, if you permit, I would like to show a couple of videos of osteopods.
yes, sir, why not? Why not?
1 minute. Are you able to see?
Yes, sir.
See the appendages. This is a live osteopoda. You can see the appendages. There are 7 pairs of appendage. All these appendages perform different functions. Some in the locomotion, some in catching the prey, some to masticate the food. Like that, each appendage has got its own function. And the body is divided into head and thorax. Pygidium is absent in case of osteopods. And there are 4 pairs of appendages in the head region and 3 pairs of appendages in the thorax region.
Dr. Hussain, I can see something moving inside the osteopoda. What is that?
Yes, sir. So their offspring, sir.
Okay.
Their offsprings.
The offsprings really moving inside the
Inside. Yes, yes.
parent body.
Generally, the reproduction takes place by sexual as well as asexual reproduction is there. But the females, particularly in the freshwater environment, the asexual reproduction, that is known as parthenogenesis. It lays the eggs in the posterior brood cavities and hatches. Thereby, offsprings are
Okay.
developed.
That's very interesting.
Dr. Hussain, is there any morphological differences between the shell produced by sexual reproduction or asexual reproduction like foraminifera?
Yes, sir. So, as I told, these males and females are there. That male can be differentiated from its dimension. The male will have a longer length and shorter height, and females will have short length and longer height. So that way, we can differentiate. And also, one more parameter is the female forms will have a brood cavity at the posterior end, and by that, we can differentiate. And one more video I would like to show. See, the osteopod carapace is opening up at the ventral side. The appendages are coming out. Dorsally it is hinged, only the ventral side only it will be opened up and the appendages will come out. One more. It's missing. Okay, I'll go to the last one. Last one. The last one, sir, it is feeding on the algae.
It's not visible.
I don't know why. Seems there is some problem.
Hmm.
This particular in the last video, the Astropoda, it was feeding on the algae.
Okay.
So that is being depicted there.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So there are quite a few questions from the students.
Yes,
But
please.
before I take those questions, Professor Sinha has requested, I think he needs to leave somewhere. So he's requested for one question. So, and soon after that, I think we'll take the questions from the students. Quite a few questions from the students.
Okay, Dr. Hussain, vanakkam.
Vanakkam. Vanakkam.
Yeah.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Assalamu
Namaste.
alaikum.
Nandri, Nandri.
Nandri, Nandri.
I have a question to you, and also I saw Dr. Vaidya sitting here, who has done a lot of work on the Ostracod land-based section, and you have done from the soft sediments, from beaches, and many recent Ostracod. As a stratigrapher, I am quite interested to know that we have a problem in freshwater Neogene and Paleogene sequences to resolve the stratigraphy and the ages. As you know, there are Cenozoic stages, right from Danian, Montian, Thanasian, Iprician, Aquitanian, Burdigalian, Tortonian.
Yeah.
All
Miocene and
these stages are based on marine type localities in Western and Southern Europe. Now, once we come to the freshwater sequences, like say Sivalics, then we cannot say that which part of Sivalik is Janklian or which part of the Sivalik belongs to that particular stage. So what we do is in stratigraphy books, even in recent stratigraphy books, you will find all Cenozoic formations of India either have used local stages, which is against the code of nomenclature. Chronostratigraphic units needs to cut across the geographic bound.
yes.
You cannot use a substitute for Miocene. So you cannot use a substitute for any stage of Miocene. But this has been done. A blunder has been done by many people. And that is why none of these stages have been published in any SCI journal so far. No journal accepts your local stage. Now I come to your talk where I see a lot of potential. I know some work from Professor Khosla. Also, I know some work from Arun Vaidya. They have done for land-based section and identified Ostracod fauna. Now I refer to a work by Frederick Swain of Minneapolis, who did all Ostracod biostratigraphy for Western United States. And he showed that the Ostracod's extinctions and evolution are very rapid. In late Oligocene, in Paleocene, in Eocene, Miocene, even in late Pliocene, there are short-ranging species. But I am yet to see one paper throughout my career which has resolved any age problem in the Indian freshwater sequencing. In Sivalics also. In Sivalics, we have upper Sivalik, middle Sivalik, lower Sivalik, and that's all. This is what I heard in my MSc days, and this is what I teach to my students, except Ranga Rao's and Sangode's interference in paleomagnetic stratigraphy.
That's true.
So, the question is, Are Cenozoic ostracods not good for biostratigraphy? Do they not have same rapid evolutionary rate as planktonic foraminifera, giving you enzonation, calcareous nanofossils, and anenzonation? Ostracods are missing completely from Cenozoic biostratigraphy of India. Not even in Andaman Nicobar Neogene sequence, where Srinivasan and others have classified each formation into planktonic foraminiferal zone. So what is the problem? Are they not good for biostratigraphy? Or from today we can start doing this work. I have 3,000, 4,000 core samples in my lab where we have done foraminiferal biostratigraphy. Can we do integrated ostracod biostratigraphy? So your talk, since the talk which Rajni has arranged, I very much appreciate, because through this talk, only we can enter into such kind of scientific venture. And maybe next year, once similar talk is held, we have gone far. So please comment, you or Arun Vaidya, anybody can comment.
Sure, sure. I do agree with your comments. As far as ostracods are concerned, these Cenozoic ostracods, they are most of the forms are the long-ranging forms, but for certain species are there. They have got the age implications, and that is the reason why Professor Khosla and Nagori, those people, they have done the Miocene, the Kerala coast, Quilon beds biostratigraphy work is done. And Anil Bhandari, he has published one paleontology monograph. He has published from the core samples of ONGC cores, and he has done. But these benthic ostracods, as such, they have less utility, less implication in the biostratigraphy. But mostly they are widely used in the paleo-environmental interpretations. But we have to do a lot of research on this. And many of the basins are not studied, not explored fully. And unless and otherwise you carry out a detailed and basin-wide study, then as you said, these particular stages in the Cenozoic or in the Paleogene or Neogene time, it is not being established, and we have to do a lot of research work on that.
I'm particularly talking about non-marine ostracods. They are referring to Khosla, and Khosla has done some work in Sivalis, but again he is not able to resolve the ages. Bhandari has some marine cores in ONGC.
Yeah,
but particularly if we can exploit ostracods for freshwater fluvial sequences and do some kind of biostratigraphy, this will be a real contribution. And you can, with your experience, you can put some students for Himalaya. You can come, you can cross Vindhyan. Okay, from Vadakkam to Namaste, you should venture into. Okay,
yes.
All South
yes,
people,
from,
all South people, Garus and non-Garus, all Tirus. I give this responsibility to my very beloved senior Rajiv Nigam, who knows how to deal with South Indians. Though I also know, because my supervisor was a Tamil. But you should all be pushed north of Indians and come here and do work in Himalayan fluvial sequence. You have Daksai, Kasoli, whole Sivaliks, and no ostracod studies for age determination. And now Rajiv Nigam is excited to speak, so I will keep resting.
I think before we go, I'm going to say that I'm going to first take up the students' questions and then open it up for all the seniors to speak. Sir, picking up a question from what Devesh Sinha sir said, you just said, because there are some questions on biostratigraphy here, you were just saying that ostracods have a limitation. You said these benthic ostracods have a limitation in biostratigraphy. Can you say, why did you say that?
Because they are having a long range in age. That's the reason. Main reason is that one. If they are very short range and they are widespread, widely occurring, then we can use them in the biostratigraphy. That is the main handicap.
Okay. So there is this other question which says that there is so much of a similarity between ostracods and bivalves. Okay, whereas they completely belong to two different phyla. Why is it so? Because it's very difficult and people tend to confuse between the two under the microscope. Is there any evolutionary relationship and why are they so similar?
They are similar externally only. When you see the carapace, it resembles to that of a pelicipod. That is the name. That is why it is known as sheet shrimps. And if you see the internal morphology of either Pelecypoda or a gastropod, the morphology totally differs. And since because they have got the appendage and this type of segmented body, osteropods are classified under phylum Arthropoda. Whereas in case of Pelecypods, which look externally to that of osteropod carapace, the morphology is totally differ. So you don't have a segmented body there in the case of the similar looking Pelecypod shells.
So then would you attribute, do you think that their habitat, the way they live, their habit actually maybe is similar of ostracods and bivalves, and that's why maybe they have a similar morphology?
No, habitat, of course, the
Habit,
yeah,
behavior.
habit is, they are benthic forms and some are nectonic forms. As far as habitat is concerned, along with the ostracods, you do have pelecypods, you do have gastropods and other kinds of organisms also, they coexist. They live there. But the habitat, it doesn't give the relationship with that of different group of organisms.
Rajni,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
one intervention, I cannot prevent myself being a teacher. The question you asked is very relevant, but in paleontology, there are thousands of examples where not only animals, but plants have also replicated animal morphology. I give you the example of pistachio, pista.
Yes, pistachio.
Take a pista, it is a perfect bivalve.
Yes,
Or ostracod.
ostracod.
You take a small pistachio, keep it under microscope and give it to Hussein, he will identify as ostracod. So there are certain approved, just like we have approved rate contracts in the university. The nature has also approved certain shells, which even plants have used. And just like the pistachio and ostracod. And ostracod comes from the Greek word ostrakon, which is a shell.
Ostracon is the shell and Vode means having the form of. Since they have the form of a shell, the name is given as ostracoda.
Okay. Sir, the next question is, if an ostracod, you said that an ostracod molts 8 times before it becomes an adult. Okay. So now doesn't this have a lot of confusion about how do you get to the right abundance and the right ratio between the young stage and the old stage, and how do you decide that you don't assign it to the same specimen?
Yeah, as far as ostracod ontogeny is concerned, you have the juveniles, you have the adults. The morphology doesn't change. The size of the carapace only as it grows. So the juvenile, the early stage, second stage or third stage or fourth stage, it will have a small size. And as it grows, it will have the size differs as it grows. So that is why I told you, that you have to prepare a scatter diagram by measuring the length and height of these juveniles as well as the adult forms, and you plot on the x-axis the length value and the y-axis the height value. We can find out how many scars, how many instars, or how many juveniles are there, whether that environment is a pristine environment or a congenial environment. But for that, all the remaining morphological characters will be same in the juveniles as well as in the adults, but only juveniles immature morphological characters, whereas in the adults, the morphological characters will have the mature, well-developed morphological characters can be seen.
Okay, so just that abundance is not enough as an indicator. You have to go further and study. Okay, the next question is, these are benthic organisms. So does it mean that they cannot indicate changes in the water column like other planktic organisms?
No, benthic organisms, since they dwell at the bottom, they are directly linked. They are directly linked to the physicochemical parameters like salinity, temperature, dissolved oxygen, other kinds of nutrients, etc. And whereas the planktonic forms, they are living in the water column. So And also the depth also it controls.
Mute everyone.
Benthics will have more relationship with the environmental parameters of that particular environment, particular area.
Okay. So the next question is, can you throw light? You just said that the ornamentation varies with the kind of pollutant, but you did not say anything more about it. Can you throw some light of how the ornamentation changes with different kind of pollutants?
Yeah, when yesterday when Dr. explaining about the pollution, industries, they're generally located on the banks of the rivers and coastal areas. And these people, the industry people, as he said, cheated, I don't say cheated, but they discharge their effluents, sometimes treated effluents, sometimes untreated effluents. When these untreated effluents are being discharged into this aquatic system, what happens is the biodiversity of the ostracod, it diminishes. And also as they have to have the morphological character because of these pollutants like your arsenic, lead, zinc, cobalt, mercury, and other kinds of trace elements, when they are being entering into the aquatic system, the morphology differs, and the size also varies, and also the biodiversity also decreases.
That
You
which
are
on, okay, unmute me. Okay, so it is difficult to assign a pollutant to a particular morphological change.
No, no, it can be done. It can be done. Not only that, you collect the core sample adjacent to your coast, adjacent to your riverine environment, or where you have the industries. Periodically, you collect the surface sample or otherwise a long core sample and analyze the ostracods starting from the bottom to the top, and then you study the biodiversity, how the ostracod assemblage is changing. And also this particular ostracod carapace, you can analyze biogeochemically and find out what kind of trace element is enriched in the ostracods which are occurring at the bottom, and the ostracods which are occurring in the middle, or the ostracods which are occurring on the top of the core. Thereby you can infer.
So another question from some research scholar, they're saying that they're working at a depth of 500 to 600 meter depths. And even at depths of 100 meters or so, the abundance, they're not finding anything at 500 or 600 meter depth. Why is that so? And why don't, because that's not even probably just reaching the ACD, but still, why don't you get so much? And is that a drawback of ostracods? Why don't you get ostracods?
Yeah. As such, ostracods are second to foraminifera in their abundance and distribution. And ostracods, they occur rarely because the carapace is made up of calcium carbonate, calcitic, and sometimes it is aragonitic. Aragonitic shells, and then easily they get dissolved. Dissolution takes place. That is the reason why, and their distribution is less in, as you go deeper and deeper, and their abundance and distribution is less. And we have one of my PhD scholar, he has done a study from Bay of Bengal slope area. He has collected core sample from NIO cruise only, along with with Rajiv Saraswat, he has gone, Nishant. So he has gone and collected the samples. And in the shallow marine, is very good biodiversity of ostracod. The ostracod diversity is drastically reducing, except Crite and Paracrite and Critella. Rest of the forms are not found there.
Okay. Sir, just a question from there. So does it mean that, how do you identify if it's someone? I don't know why someone is unmuting themselves. Mute all.
Echo.
Have you muted all? Okay. Sir,
Yeah.
then, so how do you identify if something is aragonitic or calcitic?
Yeah, aragonitic in terms of its preservation, it is feebly preserved, less preserved, whereas the calcitic shells, calcitic carapaces are well preserved.
Okay.
The morphological characters are well preserved in that particular carapace.
Okay, so there's this question from an archaeologist who asks that she has seen some work, but is there any record of how ostracod has been used to understand the impact of human civilization? How has civilization varied, and have ostracods helped in any way in understanding changes in human civilization in the past, spatially and temporally?
Yeah, in the early days of human thing, the industrialization and urbanization is not that much. And after that, more of industrialization has taken place, urbanization, and lot of sewage and domestic effluents have entered into the aquatic system. And because of this, the ostracods, their diversity, distribution, and then evolution also, they are very sensitive to the environmental changes. Not only that, they got evolved quickly in the geological time scale. Because of that, you can identify how it got changed and what is the impact of anthropogenic activities on the distribution of these things, particularly in the Quaternary period and late Quaternary or Holocene time.
Okay. So one last question, that is, they have been used widely even in the oil industry, right, in the past. So can you say why have they been used and how, for what reason of their employability have they been used in the oil industry?
Yeah, in a few of my slides, I have shown you certain statistical parameters of ostracods. Generally, in a basin, what kind of environment is needed for the generation of hydrocarbons? Anoxic environment, reduced environment. That kind of reduced environment can be very well inferred, can be very well identified from the ostracod color, carapace color, and ostracod other parameters like current index and also the carapace valve ratio. These are all some of the parameters in a particular basin. We can find out whether those sediments are having a potentiality with regard to the bearing of hydrocarbons in those sediments.
So
And
another,
it has been used also. D.K. Guha, Dilip Kumar Guha in ONGC, and he has widely used it. And after that, people have not worked on that particular aspect.
so another question that just came up. What do you think would you say are the strengths of ostracod and the limitations of ostracods as compared to other microfossil groups?
Yeah. As far as the ostracods are concerned, they are found to occur in all kinds of aquatic environment, freshwater to brackish to marine and other things. And that is an added advantage of ostracods when compared to the other group of microfossils. But the disadvantage is their long range, and hence they cannot be utilized in the biostratigraphical studies and their occurrence. When compared to foraminifera, they are less distributed, less occurring. These are the prime factors and the strength and weakness of ostracods. SWOT analysis.
Okay, so I think with this, I would request, so if you would stop sharing your screen, we can see more people on the screen and then we can interact and we can talk to people. Because I think I have answered. I still tell students if there are any questions, you can keep posting them. We can take them up. But I would open the floor I would request each one of you to please unmute yourself. And then once you've spoken, please mute yourself again. Otherwise, there'll be too much of chaos.
Not only that, Dr. Rajini, if they don't ask the question right now in this platform, you can please share my email ID and then subsequently they can post the questions through mail.
Sure. I'll surely do that, sir. I'll surely do that. I open the floor for everyone to discuss. मुझे लगता है निगम साहब कुछ कहना चाह रहे थे, तब देवेसिन्हा सर ने कहा था कि निगम साहब कुछ कहना चाह रहे हैं.
जी.
Okay, Hussain, congratulations for a wonderful lecture.
Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, well illustrated and well explained. And I see a very wide scope on the branch which you have worked for so many years. Few questions and few suggestions for this branch. The first question I want to ask, because I remember when I was working on North Sea sample, first time we noticed that dimorphic forms of foraminifera can be used as an additional tool for paleoclimatic studies. We published that paper in Paleo 3 in 86 itself. So since you say that ostracods are also dimorphic, whether their ratio also is temperature dependent or salinity dependent, environmentally dependent? If yes, then it means like foraminifera dimorphic forms osteochondrous dimorphic form can also be used as an environmental indicator. So I will, after that, I will ask the next question.
Okay. So, like your foraminifera, the dimorphism, megalospheric and microspheric, here we have the sexual dimorphism like male and female forms. And generally, the female population, females they produce the reproduction in the freshwater environment. But the efficacy, the utility of males and females in the environmental studies is not fully established. I feel that a lot of work has to be done on this particular dimorphism.
You can look at, this is a very interesting thing. If you can look at it, what it says, then you can have very good publications out of it.
Yeah, I'll tell you, it's a very simple work because I noticed this in when I was working in Northeast sample and then idea came. Because I was getting both the type of forms of Bolivina. So we calculated their ratio and seen and compared with the other parameters and established that yes, they are environmentally dependent.
Amobaculitis is also a very good.
Okay. No, amobaculitis is an agglutinated form. You cannot see the prollicular size. And unless you are able to see the prollicular size, you cannot decide whether it is dimorphic or not. Okay, so the coiled form are the best indicator, or like Bolivina elongated form. The other thing I will tell you, the benefit of using to all the youngsters here. See, foraminifera, you can use it only when it is marine environment. Okay, using the same concept which I was trying to project yesterday with the help of foraminifera, you can do almost similar studies, all the studies, whether it is monsoon, whether it's sea level, whether it's pollution, with the help of osteochord also. Since we have such a big country on land, if industries are polluting, I think osteochord will be the best tool to go for studies. Develop it as an applied aspect. Give more emphasis on the applied aspect so paleontology became an applied branch.
Yes.
Okay, if you go on projecting about the slides and this type of species is more in freshwater, this is more in marine, nobody is going to bother us. Since you told about ornamentation with reference to the salinity, I was wondering, why not you try to do it for the paleomonsoon studies like the way I have done it for foraminifera? Okay, ask Rajiv if he can get the same samples, and if you get osteochord, you can develop a pattern. See, all other things we established there, including even oxygen isotope studies. So you can try with osteochord. But
Yes.
only problem in marine environment about osteochorda is their abundance is very less. See, when you go for a core sample, normally we go for 2 to 4 inches cores. And osteochorda, you need a lot of sediment to wash to get few tests. So 4-inch diameter and 1 centimeter thick, hardly you get some 3-4 osteochords. I have seen it, that's why I'm telling you. So there are, you can overcome this problem when you are participating in our cruises. You say at least 1 or 2 crucial places instead of the circular 4-inch diameter core, request them to go for the box core, which is 1 foot by 1 foot. Okay, so you can get a lot of sediments, you wash it, so you will get a lot of sediment, osteochords into it. Okay, it's a very good tool, and please try to develop more students, see that they are getting their jobs so that your branch is taken care. Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you very much, sir. I thank you very much for your suggestion.
Any more questions? Sir, there was another question that I received from a student. For taxonomy, is it important that can we use just one valve, or you need the entire carapace?
No, even with one valve also you can do. You need to study the hinge. You need to study the muscle scar pattern, how the inner lamella is there, and the marginal or radial pore canals, and what kind of normal pores, whether open or sieve type pores, and what is the size. When you have both the valves together, we can find out the width, the thickness, and if it is one valve, single valve, that parameter will be missing. So that is why With one valve also, we can do the taxonomy, morphological identification can be done.
Okay. So I think with that, like my questions are over. In case, is there anyone who wants to say something? Otherwise, I will ask Risha. Any questions?
Dr. Hussain, there is one very important area where you can venture into. As I invited you to the north of India, the ostracods are very good material for AMS dating,
Mhm.
particularly in the lacustrine cores. Once they go for radiocarbon dating,
Yeah,
they
large.
search for humus, any material which has carbon.
Mhm.
But if you get ostracods, because you have a lot of lacustrine ostracods, they are very good material for AMS dating. For the domain of radiocarbon age, you have the best material. But many people, they don't know about ostracods, so they search for only humus, particularly in the river terraces of Himalaya, where they do a lot of neotectonic activity research. There in the river terraces, they are very soft sediments. We do get ostracods there, and they can provide a very good precise age of the river terraces. So such things people are doing. You see, you can collaborate and you can tell them, because you need calcium carbonate which is inside to precipitate, and
Yes.
ostracods are there.
Yes. Thank you very much for your
Rajini
suggestion.
ma'am, may I ask a question?
Yes, sir, please. Vanzarwadkar,
Hello?
sir, please. Vanzarwadkar, sir, please. Sir, please. Vanzarwadkar, sir, bola.
Yeah. Yes, yes. Very good morning or good afternoon to everybody. Actually, my question is to Professor S.M. Hussain, sir. That, sir, behind our institute, there is a plateau over which there is a small ponds or pits are there, and those pits are being filled during rainy season. And in the summer they go dry. But one of our students has collected some water sample from that pit this year, and he got some ostracods. So I'm just surprised that when there is a total dry ponds are there, how they survive, and what is the lifespan then of the ostracods?
Yeah. This is a pond you are telling, it is a freshwater environment. Generally, these freshwaters, they reach to the adult stage from few weeks to 1 month. And then they live for a few months only. And afterwards they die, and that carapace will be present in that dry environment. So their growing to the adult stage is very short time. Whereas when you come to the marine forms, and they reach the adulthood in months, and they live for a few years. Whereas this freshwater forms, they reach the adult stage in 1 or 2 months, and they live for few months.
Okay.
So,
So because there is no such connection to this water body.
Yeah.
These are very small ponds of 1 or 2 feet, and they don't have any such water connection.
No, not at all.
Only rainwater.
Not at all. This freshwater bodies water connection is not at all needed. Even in the forest, humid soils also.
Yes.
These
Yes.
ostracods are found.
Moisture. They live on moisture. They live on moisture. Yes.
Yeah.
They are found.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Professor
Thank you, sir.
Dinesh and Dr. Nikamji and
Sudhir sir wants to say something. Sudhir Shukla sir wants to.
I just want to add that to Professor Sen that, like say, some people have said that the applied aspect of the ostracod study, that is really the need of the hour, and maybe perhaps like Professor Dr. Rajiv Nigam and Professor Devesh, they've given you suggestion that you can use them in very well in pollution studies, very well in this type of maybe archaeology also, and as Devesh was telling, in the isotopic dating, besides the normal use of ostracod as a supplement to the oil exploration. That's what it is.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
as
I-
Professor Devesh and Dr. Rajiv Nikamji said, lacustrine, particularly the Sivalik area, that environment has to be studied in detail, and also the dimorphism and other parameters as they have done rounded symmetrical form and asymmetrical elongate forms with regard to the pollution and other thing. This type of, there are so much scope is there with regard to AstroCard. And of course, I have got about 3 years of service for my retirement. And before that, if any suitable candidate comes, I will assign this work to that candidate.
You can put your, some of your,
yeah, we will work on that. And before my retirement, I have got an appeal to Professor M.P. Singh Saab. And whatever the taxonomy, ecological work which I have carried out during the past 2.5 decades along the coast of Tamil Nadu, I would like to publish a monograph on Ostracoda and their bathymetry as well as ecological implications. I would like to publish a monograph.
That is how you want to come to north of India.
So,
Dr. Hussain, you are most welcome.
thank you, sir. Thank you.
We'll try
Professor
to
Hussain, you are head of department now.
Yeah.
Okay, you cannot pass on responsibility to others.
You can publish
See,
it yourself.
no, see that before you retire, another at least 2-3 paleontologists are appointed in your department.
Let us see. Sir. Let us see.
Okay. With this, I think what I need to remind everyone is there are also parallel talks in the second session which are being organized by Nagpur University. And today, Sudhir Shukla sir is going to deliver a lecture at 2:30 on paleontological support to the hydrocarbon exploration. Yes, and because of that, I think even he wants to be excused early. And so with this, I'm going to invite Risha. Risha, are you there? I request Risha to please deliver the vote of thanks.
Rajni, I think I can leave the meeting now.
Yes, sir. Please.
Sudhir, that lecture is on Zoom or Google?
It's on Google Meet. It's on Google Meet.
Okay.
Google Meet.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Am I audible?
Yes, Risha, you're audible.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Risha D'Souza, MSc student from St. Xavier's College, Mumbai. It gives me an immense pleasure today to deliver this vote of thanks on behalf of the Paleontological Society of India, Pune Mumbai Students Chapter. I would like to express my gratitude towards Dr. S.M. Hussain for taking time from his busy schedule and delivering this lecture today. Sir, thank you for beginning the lecture with the basics and the history of the microfossils, and for showing us SEM images which helped us to picture how a microfossil looks like. And thank you, sir, for explaining the morphology of ostracods and how this morphology is basically used to find out the ecology and the effect of the substrate and the salinity on morphology, the shell chemistry, and the indicators of hydrocarbons such as the color index that you mentioned, and the pyritization on carapace, and the ratio of carapace to valve, which is the indicator of sedimentary ratio. So I would also like to thank you for walking us through the identification of the paleo tsunamis and the field photographs of Andaman and Nicobar Islands, and sharing the results of your fieldwork with us today. So I would really like to thank you for extending the scope and the potential areas of ostracods studies with us. And also thank you for showing us the videos on ostracods and explaining the morphology of a live ostracod and showing us the carapace. Thank you, sir, once again. I also thank the Paleontological Society of India and their office bearers for the constant support and presence during these talks. I also would mention the support of the Vice Chancellor, Professor Karmalkar, and the entire staff for the support and logistics, and the technical team for the Zoom lectures and the live Facebook lecture today. I thank the office bearers, the student members of PSI, Pune Mumbai Students Chapter, students and staff from St. Xavier's College, Mumbai, Ferguson College, Pune, ATHM College, Nasik, and all the staff members and students present here today attending this lecture. I thank you all once again for your attention and participation in this lecture, and I look forward to seeing you all tomorrow again for a lecture by Dr. Jyoti Srivastava at 11:30 a.m. sharp. Thank you.